Hello, I'm Rebecca Helms, and this presentation will compare and contrast federal and state laws which impact higher education and the readiness of U.S. students. Over the past 4 decades, the United States educational systems have had a coming of age regarding early intervention programs and methodologies for ensuring disadvantaged and students with disabilities receive professional assistance in meeting their own academic potential. Across the nation and the states, laws and statutes now protect those students with services designed to assist the students in overcoming obstacles and challenges, whether they be physical, mental, emotional, or psychologically. Basically, any obstacle which prevents them from reaching their potential or increases the likelihood of the student not graduating high school with an acceptable level of skills. These efforts are due in large part to years of parental uproar, grassroots efforts of advocates, and eventually the intervention of the government at the federal and state levels. That's according to Bailey's article of 2000. While the intentions of such wide sweeping legislations are often morally justified, they often fail to acknowledge the irregularities of socially oriented institutions and the humanity of local educational professionals, according to Torres in 2004. Two similar laws at the federal and state level include President Obama's Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, which built upon the premises of President Bush's No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, and the South Carolina Board of Education Regulation 43-274.1 for at-risk students. To compare and contrast these laws, we first look at the Every Student Succeeds Act of the Obama administration, also known as the ESSA law, sought to build upon the well-intentioned aim of No Child Left Behind Act by President Bush. Both of these sought to protect students, especially those at risk or minority students, from graduating high school or dropping out without basic skills in reading, mathematics, and science. This is according to Torres's article of 2004. Both laws set up a system for granting the necessary funding and the withholding of funding when certain metrics and testing outcomes were not achieved on state and federal tests. The ESSA also implemented the role of overt public dissemination of the national rankings and results to show Americans where their states stood in comparison to others, drawing conclusions of quality by comparison. The intention was to hold schools accountable to outcomes and public scrutiny and to demonstrate statistical gaps in performance and achievement between the white population and students of color, incoherent or redundant curricula, and systematic complacency. This is again in accordance to Torres's article of 2004. In a similar effort, South Carolina implemented SBE 43-274.1, which gives extensive directions on the lengths a school must go to in order to ensure every effort is made to accommodate at-risk youth and prevent them from dropping out of school. At risk in this statute includes homeless or near homeless children, foster or orphan children, children demonstrating abuse at home, truancy, a disconnectedness from school, children who are single parents themselves, children who live in a home without at least one parent, and children who do not speak English as their first language. Both the federal and state laws seek to ensure these populations do not fall through any proverbial cracks in the educational system, drop out, or become members of the school-to-prison pipeline, which is statistically a greater risk for this population. Unfortunately, another commonality the federal and state statutes share is the underlying failure to acknowledge the remaining undercurrents and often blatant demonstrations of racism, bigotry, xenophobia, and classism which continue to plague the nation, regions, and school districts in which these students live. Torres, 2004. Within South Carolina, this is demonstrated by how the rising cost of college tuition impacts this population, who often fall into the category of first-generation college students. For example, from 2000 to 2015, there has been a steady decline of first-generation college students in comprehensive colleges and an even steeper decline of enrollment in research institutions. Usually, these are attended by mostly white students. This is in accordance with College Access and Affordability of 2018. There's only an average of 19 to 30% of all college students being considered first-generation college students. Each law also fails to account for, measure, and consider the overwhelming impact of parental involvement in a student's academic success, and how this will vary in a significant way based on regional, cultural, ethnic, and geographical factors within the United States. Parental involvement is the single most accurate predictor of student academic success and the ability to graduate high school over any other factor. This is according to Bowie and Rush in 2016, which demonstrates each law's ability to guide educators in overcoming the prevailing dilemma in being able to close performance gaps. The main difference to be found within these laws is the breadth of scope and detail on how schools will achieve the expected outcomes. The federal law provides a sweeping goal of metrics to be achieved, but does not dictate how each state should achieve the outcomes in terms of teacher qualifications, curricular requirements, student-to-teacher ratio guidelines, and etc. In an evaluation of the laws, we look at how the laws impact the ultimate goal of higher education. While such laws as the Affirmative Action Law of 1961 sought to broaden the opportunities for minorities into the U.S. workforce and higher education systems by requiring employers and universities to broaden their hiring and acceptance standards, it also failed to address the impact of human nature and parental influence. Affirmative action sought to provide access and employment and higher education to disadvantaged people harmed by educational inequality or access and/or the discriminatory practices of hiring managers. By doing so, education of a nation would improve because of access to greater diversity and a wider view of world and regional ideas and solutions. This is according to Gurin, Day, and Hurtado's article in 2002. Subsequent educational laws and statutes at the state and federal level are based in similar moral intentions, but rely too heavily on impeccable ethical behaviors of educators and local school boards. The ideological alignment and implementation at the teacher level and the physical capacity to endure the weighted and undercompensated role of teacher as the parent at the teacher level. The laws are aligned in their intent and goal of social justice, equality, and the greater good of an educated, diverse nation, but fail to mitigate the destructive nature of poverty, racism, classism, and overall human behavior, which will continue to hamper the nation's ability to bolster its student enrollment to higher educational institutions until meaningful discourse and honest assessments of how the U.S. population values the pursuit of happiness and prosperity for all.